Hey, it's Meredith. I just got back from a glorious week of driving up the west coast of Michigan, taking in views of lighthouses and sand dunes and the waters of Lake Michigan. Oh, it was good for my soul. I hope you have an opportunity to do some soul-refreshing things like that this summer, too. Sometimes when you head to a new place, when you get out of your normal routine, God brings along encounters, sometimes with total strangers, that end up making a surprising impact on your life. So this week, we're going to share a story from our archives that's about how those kinds of encounters can change your life. We're going to be back next week with a brand new story, but for now, enjoy this one from the archives. Page 164 of The Unfolding is the story of Jon Reddick.
My faith in God was strong. I knew God could do it. I wasn't sure that he would do it for me. I was cynical in that era. I had gone through some hard things in life. I had gone through a point where I was ready to give up on not life itself, but what I thought my dreams would be.
God's story has been unfolding
since the beginning of time.
He invites you to be a part of it.
Another page in the unfolding.
Hi, this is Meredith Foster. Jon Reddick is a worship leader and songwriter who writes songs of healing hearts, broken relationships, racial and generational divides. There was a time when the hurts and hard parts of life left him questioning, not that God was real, but was his plan, specifically for Jon, was it good? As he battled those thoughts, this extremely talented singer and musician considered leaving music behind. You know, God speaks to us in many ways, and sometimes it's through total strangers. This is a story of how two encounters changed Jon's life and might be part of the reason that you hear Jon's songs like God, Turn It Around and I Believe It on the radio today. Just a word of caution, this episode does include a discussion of suicidal ideation. When did you go both feet into music? You knew that that was what you were going to do. I mean, I know you've been in music all your life, right?
Right. But I wasn't. I mean, when I was a kid, I would imagine.
What did you think you were going to be or do?
Well, I had a 4-piece band when I was a kid, but it was all different versions of me. It was just me in my room. So
awesome.
It's like I had these weird names, Bill and Lucy. I don't know. And it was just me just playing different instruments, and they weren't even instruments. It was like me beating on a book here and scratching on something there, and I don't know. But as I got older, I loved to do art, so I thought I was going to be an artist, and then I realized, I heard the term starving artist, so I didn't want to
not go that way.
I was like, well, maybe I should be an architect. So then I started going that way, but music really was while I was in college. I started with architecture, and I realized that music was something I loved more, and so that's kind of how I started going into that direction, wanting to do that professionally.
When did you write your first song? Was that as a kid also?
That was as a kid. That was at 9 years old, and my kids make fun of me in a bad way about that song. Because my dad actually found the lyrics, or still had the lyrics to it, like still had the actual paper I wrote it on, and so he sent it to me this last year, and I thought it was so endearing. I showed my kids, and they laughed at me. So, I mean, it's bad though. It's so bad. It's like saying something about Thanksgiving is a time for giving is surely not a time for stealing or something. I'm like, why am I using surely as a 9-year-old? So bad. It was the worst.
Everybody starts somewhere, right?
Hey, you know what?
All right, just as a way of background, you grew up in the church. Your dad was a pastor? I mean, just give me a little rundown of what that was like.
I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor. My mom played the piano, and she was over the music department. Like everywhere we were, that was kind of the story. And I remember walking down the aisle probably when I was 8 years old. So, I mean, giving my life to Christ, but I've learned that I had to give more of myself as I got older. I did make that decision, but you just get older and realize, oh, I haven't given this to you, or I haven't given, here's a new part of me I didn't know existed. I need to give this to you.
So the story we're going to talk about today, this started about 7 years ago.
You know what? I think so. About that time, I was on tour. I played piano for a couple of years for Mandisa. And so we were on tour, and I remember it was the era where the supermoon was happening. You remember, like, one of the supermoons. I remember being in Tennessee, and I tried to catch the supermoon, but they're like, it's going to be bigger tomorrow. But anyway, it turns out that it's going to be its biggest in San Francisco. And I realized that we're on the road and we're going to be in Sacramento. So, I'm like, man, I wish I could go, and I wish I can get all the way to San Francisco. I'll just watch it in Sacramento. And a guy on the bus, like he was a kid, really. I mean, he's probably 19, 20. He was like, man, I can get you there or whatever. And I was like, yeah, okay. So long story short, there was no way for me to get there. And God just kept making these ways for me. I ended up in San Francisco.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I'm just on this excursion. It's just like John, to be on an excursion, an adventure. And I end up I see my cousins in Oakland. I have dinner with them. And I'm sitting there talking at their house, and I finally head down to San Francisco in the middle of the night. It's probably like 3:00 by now. And they're like, the supermoon is going to be its biggest. So finally I get all the way down there, and there's fog everywhere.
No.
I was like, no. And so I'm at the bridge. I'm at the
Golden Gate Bridge?
Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm at the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time in my life. I've never been there, and I love art, so I'd always wanted to paint the picture, but I was like, I'm just down there for the supermoon. I meet this guy who's also there at 3:00 in the morning to see the supermoon, but he's there to take pictures of it. So I'm like, oh, this is crazy. So we're the only two crazy people down there.
No way.
And then this security officer says, hey, actually, on the other side of the bridge, it's higher, so you'll actually be above the fog. We were like, what? He's like, yeah, so here, I'll take you over there.
No.
The two of us crawl in his paddy wagon. I'm in the back of it's the weirdest thing, the wildest thing. I'm in the back of this paddy wagon with the guy I never met before, headed across the bridge. So we get over there, and as we get over there, we get ready to get out, but realize it's moving fast. So now it's ducked behind what we realize is a mountain ridge. We didn't know it was there. So then we're running, and now his name is Ricky. All right, so
you've gotten to know Ricky.
I've gotten to know Ricky, but Ricky was a little inebriated. So he's like, we're running, and then he needs to take breaks. Oh my God. He's like, hold on. So I'm like, okay. So, we started this journey. We're going to end this journey together. So we're running up around the street and around this street. And I have no idea where I am. I'm just like, okay, the GPS says we'll go this way. So every time we go around another corner, the moon is moving so fast. We have to keep running to catch it. We finally get the most beautiful image I've ever seen. He takes a picture of it. And he was saying he said, my name is Ricky, but they call me El Baracco. It means Ricky the Drunk. I was like, oh, wow, this is something. This is really something. Now, I need to rewind for a second. I was in an era where my faith in God was strong. I knew God could do it. I wasn't sure that he would do it for me. And so my whole entire faith had been kind of I was cynical in that era. I was really cynical, and I was like, yeah, whatever,
When you say do it for me, what did that mean for you?
I needed some healing. I had gone through some hard things in life. I had gone through a point where I was ready to give up on not life itself, but just what I thought my dreams would be. Like, I wasn't going to do music anymore. I was just... You
were thinking about exiting music?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about it. I had thought about that a lot. And so at this point, I was just kind of just existing, if you'd say, and just trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. And I remember getting that picture, And all of a sudden, we start walking back. Now, this was at the beginning of my week. This was on a Monday. God ended up bookending my week with two things that I'll never forget. We start walking back, and now Ricky we've run all of his alcohol out of his body.
He's sober.
He's so sober right now. And then he starts telling me how he was clairvoyant and how he's dibbled and dabbled in all these things, and he wasn't sure about Christianity, and he's tried to get rid of the demons inside of him with sage and fire, and he starts naming some things. Now, I'm from South Memphis. I know how to handle myself around people who want to cause physical harm, so I wasn't worried about that. But I was like, God, if he has demons and I'm walking on the side of this mountain, I don't need anything jumping and kicking me off the side because nobody will ever find me at 4 o'clock in the morning. The sun starts rising and he's just telling me his story. And I'm actually like, God, I don't know what's going to happen right now. I just want to make it home. And so we're finished walking past the cliffs, and now we're walking across the Golden Gate Bridge. And we're just talking. I'm talking about God. He's talking about his story. We get halfway. He's talking about this girl in his life that he likes and how he has to make it back to Michigan and things like that. And then he just starts crying. He says, man, I got to tell you this. He says, when I came here this morning, he has this, he said, when I first met him, he was telling me how he takes professional pictures and everything like that. He said, when I first came here this morning, my plan was to get here, throw my camera in the water, and then jump. And he says, but something of that you're talking about today makes me not want to jump anymore. And I'm a physical space person. I need my physical space. And I just remember being like, I put my arm around him. I said, Ricky, you're not jumping today, bro. And we walk across the rest of that bridge. That was in November. And now every November, man, it's messing me up. Every November he messages me and he tells me how he's doing.
Oh my goodness.
And I grew up watching different kind of movies, so I didn't know what he meant when he called me Clarence. And my wife explained to me who Clarence was. Was it Wonderful Life?
It's a Wonderful Life.
And so I've just always been able to just share with him, and it's just a beautiful thing. That was the beginning of my week. And I had never met anybody who had ever talked to me about suicide ever in my life. Or not in that moment. Like, you know, I've heard stories about people who had wanted to make that in their past, but not for that day. The end of that week, I'm riding in an Uber, and some of my best conversations are always with the Uber driver. The Uber driver tells me how he's a youth pastor and everything like that. But, well, he was a youth pastor, but now he's driving us to the event where his youth group that he used to be a part of will be there. But because of divorce, he is no longer able to be there. And we are talking, and we're just sharing stories and testimonies. And at the end of the time, we pull up to the arena, and he says, I got to tell you, tonight was going to be my last night driving. And he says, but there's something about your story that encourages me. And I just remember being like, there is no way on this planet, God, that you would allow me to observe and be a part of two people or hearing their journey. And that was when he was like this. I remember specifically the idea that God put in my heart was that I know that you think that I won't do it for you, but I just need you to be patient, because it's not about when you need it. It's all on the cycle of life and the cycle of his story and his grace and his love. It's all in timing. And I walked away from that week realizing that that God has not forgotten about us. He sees us all. He just sees us in what we would call the nick of time.
God was using some extraordinary circumstances to point Jon toward his purpose. But understanding what that would look like, what that meant for his life, that was going to be a process. So you come back after that experience with an infusion of at least willingness to be patient and wait and watch.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that was, man, I would say God was gut punching me in a lot of ways. He got like Mike Tyson to me in this era. I think that was the beginning of 2017, because God kept hitting me with life-changing experiences through that entire season. The things that have changed my life forever. So I came back from that experience, trusting him more, realizing purpose more. He just keeps kind of confirming purpose in different ways. And man, learning to kind of like trust fall with God, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think your purpose is? I mean, if you had to articulate what you feel like he's been showing you.
I know that one of the things that he's called me to do is to be a part of a bridge. There are many people on a bridge. There are many people who are part of this bridge that help unite people. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like uniting, or at least pointing to him so he can unite us, is one of the ways. Like, I think when we're worshiping, we lay down so many things in worship that we're able to see each other more. And I think also he's taken me on a journey to learn the emotional side of humans, you know, like us as humans, how we operate emotionally, not just in the cerebral way, but the things that are underneath the layers sometimes. And so to be able to share the stories, to testify, really, you know.
Those life-altering things you've talked about that you've gone through in that time, is that what he's used to help you understand people and
Yes.
experience?
Yes, absolutely. There's a book that has changed my life forever by a guy named Chip Dodd. It's called Voice of the Heart. And I think during that time I was actually reading that book probably. And I just go back to the book all the time. But it's something that a lot of counseling ministries or counseling units will use, intensive use. You know, it's a very strong book, and it points to a lot about the core of us as Christians, as humans, and things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how long after that week of, bizarre God appointments, was there a time when you sort of looked up and went, oh, now I'm living that thing, that dream that I thought God was withholding from me? Was there a time, was there something that you came to a place where you went, oh, this is it. This was what I was hoping for or waiting for?
You know what? No pun intended, but I feel like it's an ever unfolding thing.
That's what I wonder.
Yeah. Sometimes it's interesting because I don't think that we always know what we're actually wanting. You know, we say that it's this, and then we get there. It's like, oh, that's not what I was wanting. My sister she just mentioned this actually, posted this or something like that. But we have our eyes on the prize, and we get to the prize and we realize, oh, that's not the joy of life. You know, it's like the everlasting chase that humans go after, that we as people go on. And it's something much deeper that we're actually looking for. Sometimes we're trying to patch up old wounds. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're looking for Jesus. Like, he's the completion that we're always chasing after, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what I believe.
So you're a worship leader at Church of the City, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So they do this really cool thing at the beginning of the year, like fasting and prayer for 21 days, which was, I participated in that from many miles away, but it was life-altering for me.
Amazing.
Yeah, really cool. I started into it, like wanting breakthrough in some specific areas in my life. That's probably was my primary motivation for doing it. And I think in my mind, I thought, oh, at the end of 21 days, breakthrough. Right? And instead, what I learned was, I don't know how to describe it, but lifestyle that I adopted, which was setting aside a lot more time with Jesus than I ever would. And by the time I got to the end of it, here's what I felt like God was saying. Well, that's what I wanted. All the other stuff, the breakthrough, and I'm not even concerned about that. And just realizing that finding contentment in the process, in the relationship with Jesus, practicing the way of Jesus, right? Finding contentment in that place. I don't know if you can relate to that at all, because you still have dreams.
Yes.
But you aren't deflated by the fact that the dreams haven't come to reality. Does that can you resonate with that at all?
I totally get what you, it's almost like this, we want this booyah kind of thing, you know? We do. And in a sense, some of that comes from the release of whatever it is we were under, you know, like whether it's hardship or whether it's stress or we wanted something to actually happen or, you know, breakthrough. It just makes me think release. But there's something that sounds more boring after that, but is more fulfilling than any of it. And so, like, I think I can honestly say that I feel like I'm in a part of life where I've found like real peace, real joy in him that I have never experienced before. And the consistency of him giving that to me is way more valuable than any boom that I could have ever asked him for, you know? Now life is crazy. Sometimes it's still hard, you know, but the idea of being able to get up and tackle it again, that's totally different. And I had never experienced that. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm peacing out for the day. And that's just the way life is. It has ups and downs, but just the ability to be able to trust him more. Yeah, that's the thing that I'm so glad that he lets, like you say, unfold. I love that title. So yeah,
because that's how it is. It's always in motion, right? It's always happening.
It's always happening.
It is his character to always be working. I think for many people, like what you're describing is, I forget how the phrase it used, but consistently experiencing his peace. I'm not sure that's how you said it, but just like consistently in that relationship with him. There are a lot of people who are like, I'd love to experience that. I have no idea how to get there.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious for you if there are practices like rule of life, rhythms, certain things that you do that help usher that into your life.
Yeah. So I don't want to make it sound, I want to make sure I'm distinguishing. I'm not trying to make it sound like every day of mine now is a peaceful thing. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
I got you.
And life hits me hard in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I approach it in spiritual ways, in practical ways, in emotional ways. So spiritually, I try to zoom out and remember that I'm not God and I can't make it happen. I can't make it change. I have to lean on him, and I don't know how it's going to look. But in the end, no matter what's happening, I'm just trying to trust in him. Now, that doesn't give me that alone doesn't give me just the peace that I need to get through the day, you know? So then, I mean, I have good mentors and community, if you want to say it. I'm also always willing to talk to a counselor.
Amen.
So with emotional situations, you know, a lot of times people say counselor and then people try it for the first time and they bump their heads on the first two counselors and say, I'm done. But it took me a few counselors before I found the one that could understand me, hear my story, but also call me out and be like, yeah, John, that doesn't make sense. And he's a nice guy, but he was like, when it comes time, he's like, yeah, well, maybe, but a counselor that can always call you on it and still point to Jesus, you know, and it's different for every person, right? I mean, everybody's different. And then mentally being like, okay, how am I thinking about this? How does God think about this? Where am I leaning on God in this, in the spiritual aspect is probably a question I'd ask myself. How am I feeling about this? And what is, my wife likes to say, what is reality? What is reality and what is me? Like fogging up the reality, you would say. And then what am I thinking about this? You know, like the cerebral. So I don't know. And then as funny as this sounds, I believe your environment makes does a lot of things. So I'm a huge believer in setting the tone setting the mood that I want to be in, using music to do that. So
Can you flesh that out? Like, what do
So-
you mean? What does that mean?
So if I want to focus, then I'll play classical music.
Oh.
If I'm not focused and I'm attention deficit in the moment, then I'll play some music that's like, helping me focus or something like that, or real loud and fast. I don't know. I've dived into how to kind of get my brain to focus in a certain way, kind of thing, if that makes sense. And then I love hue lights. I am addicted to the lights in my house. My wife would say it's bad. but it's like, if I need to be in a bright mood, then one of the things I'll do is turn the lights on, the bright light kind of thing. If I need to kind of chill and I want to make some music, then I know how to make the blues and the purples and the reds, and so I'll do that. Like, if you go in the studio, it's like that all the time. But like if you go in Starbucks, you notice their lights are dim, because they're giving you coffee. They don't need you to have bright lights too. So it's like everybody is tapping into the science of lights. So I love it.
So you do a lot of different things. And I'm curious, when you're talking about like purpose and feeling, there are times when you're doing something and you feel that fulfillment. It feels real, like it's lining up with your purpose really well. I'm going to assume songwriting is one of those places for you.
Yeah.
But you also do art. Is that one of those places for you? I just would love to hear about how that kind of stuff works out.
Yeah, no, it is. I think some of the hardest moments in my life, I've gone to a canvas. Yeah.
When did you start that?
I started as a teenager, but I wasn't coming out with what I wanted to come out with on the canvas. So then I quit for a long time. And years later, probably 15, 20 years later, I picked it back up. And so then,
Is it a spiritual experience for you when you paint?
sometimes
Depends?
yes, it depends. Like Tina Turner, just, R.I.P. Right. But so for me to feel through that, some of what I would do is go to a canvas and paint Tina Turner, as it reminds me of some of the things African Americans have given as they devoted their life to, to music or something like that. Like, or when Ray Charles passed, I did the same thing. But also when there was a riot, I painted something that I call, We Need His Light, or something like that. It's me holding a light bulb, like without his, like, but the light is lit, but it's not plugged in. So the whole idea was, man, like, there are a lot of ideas. I try not to explain the painting, but we ended up using it for You Keep Hope Alive. It's the cover of it. And but the funny thing was, I didn't realize that the painting I was painting and the song that we wrote happened in the same week. My manager came back and said, "Hey, what if we use this painting?" I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Whoa, wait. That is the song." I didn't realize that I had kind of split my brain into one, I got some of the frustration and hurt and pain out through the painting, and then some of the other, we wrote a song about it, And so, so that, but I'll still lean to those core things, the emotion things, and like one of the things Chip Dodd talks about, the healthy side and the unhealthy side of an emotion. So the unhealthy side of sadness is depression and, the deep things where it's hard to come back from. But the healthy side is honoring the things that you've lost and being able to do that. And so I try to lean into the healthy side of any emotion, or at least recognize when I'm being all the way in the unhealthy side, So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to imagine there's some folks who are listening and they're kind of where you were when you were on the bus with Mandisa before the supermoon and thinking, God's not going to come through for me. For whatever reason, it happens for everybody else, but it's not going to come through for me. And I just wonder, if you were in a conversation with somebody like that, what would you have to say in terms of encouragement?
I would say that the way God writes these stories, he's always consistently, in the end, it's okay. That's one thing that I always believe. In the end, it's always a different story or a different ending or a different narration for each of us. But God has his way. He finds his way to come through in some kind of way where we realize when we zoom out that that he's been with us the entire time, kind of like that old Footprints poem. We realize when we zoom out of the story. In it is hard, and I mean it's hard to zoom out when we're in the middle of it. Like the truth of the matter is, like when we're right in the middle of it, we can't see anything else but that in the moment. The walls of hurt and pain are high, and so it's hard to look over those walls. But it's like he's looking in the entire time, and he's carrying us through every small moment of it. And so I encourage anyone to lean in and trust him, and don't stop reading your Bible when there's nothing else. Just go there. That he brings his words sometimes act as a balm, as a healing, and then praying and giving our pains and our hurts and our desires and our hopes to him, laying them at his feet. And then worship for me helps a whole lot. Like just being able to fall on my knees and, to be honest, cry if I have to. I think sometimes we don't cry enough. I one of the things I've tried to teach my kids is that, man, we gotta just feel it. If it's there, feel it. And they're older now, so but there's what's that movie? It's like a Pixar movie. I can't remember the name of the movie.
Inside Out. Is that the one with all the emotions?
Yes, the one with all the emotions. And Bing Bong sits there and starts crying. And I was like, man. And he gets it out and he's like way better. But you know what I found out later is that the toxins sometimes that we're holding inside, our tear. So if I go outside and I have allergies and my eyes water up, my eyes are watering with a different liquid. Like, the toxins come out in tears.
No kidding.
They don't come out in like allergy watering up your eyes, but the toxins that are being held, they actually get released through our tears. And so scientifically, spiritually, like it's all. Science is now starting to understand what the Bible's been saying thousands of years ago, right? So sometimes just the ability to just give yourself the freedom to cry about it, but not to stay there. That's not the only thing. Like, there's also when we cry and then when we lean on Jesus and read in the Word and things like that.
Yeah. Sometimes part of that process is like, when we're discouraged or we feel like it's not happening for us, it's because a specific dream died. Like the thing that we thought was going to happen died. And we have to grieve that. And there's no great Instagram posts about that. There's no, nobody's bragging about those kind of moments. Yeah. Our culture really elevates achieving your dreams. But there are times when what we thought was what God had for us, we have to grieve it. Yeah. And that's hard. And I think coming through COVID, I mean, there's been a lot of grieving of all kinds of things that we had to let go of that we thought were coming and didn't. Yeah. So I think,
oh, that's so
sitting in grief is underrated.
Yeah. Wow. That's so true. Yeah. The things that we've not been able to have. Yeah. My daughter told me one day, she said, "Can I have that?" I was like, "No." She said, "It's only $49.95. I was like, "Oh, who are you? What job do you have?" Right. Only 40. I'm not rearing you right, because this is not. But I feel like that's how we go through life. Like, I should be able to have this because it's only, and God is like, no, that's not what we're doing for today. But because we don't set out to, sometimes we don't realize that we won't get that. But God is like, man, actually what I have for you is something that is actually far better for you. And it's hard to grasp that. And it's hard to let go of that dream.
It is. But that does seem to be the long-term truth, is that he never leaves us. He's working for our good. Yeah. May not feel good in the moment, but he's working for our good.
Yeah.
So any dreams or things that you're hoping for next for you? I mean, are there any things that God's stirring in your heart?
And this may be, I think I'm more excited about seeing how the next thing that God is always doing. And I'm trying to make sure it's not apprehension for being afraid that it won't come true. But my kids are getting older. And so I think one of the biggest things that I just want to see is that I just want to see them approach life in the healthiest way they can, not to put any pressure on them, I hope that they can lean on the ones who love them, their parents, when they need to. And man, and then I think one of the things I'm really praying is that people can find healing in some of the songs that God gives me to share with them. That it's not just like a shallow kind of, I like to listen to that. I'm praying that people's stories, our stories resonate and, people find healing in it. So I'm excited about God and what he has for people. So I got a couple of new songs coming soon. So I'm hoping that I'm excited about sharing those. Yeah, pretty soon. One is one that I put on hold for a while. And so I'm excited for it to finally get ready to be releasing this fall. So my church gets to hear all the songs because we love to do them in worship. And so this one is about a feeling. It's about the feeling of loneliness, but it points to God and reminds us that we don't fight by ourselves.
That's going to resonate with a lot of people. Thanks for writing it and for all that you do.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that.
If you'd like to hear more from Jon, he'll be heading out on tour this fall, and many weekends you can see him leading worship at his church, Church of the City in Franklin, Tennessee. See his beautiful paintings, hear more of his music at jonreddickmusic.com. Thanks so much to Jon for sharing his story. Would you like to help this kind of life-changing storytelling grow? When you support the Wow God Podcast Network, you allow us to create podcasts where every story gives listeners a chance to say, wow, God. You can make a monthly gift of $40. You can make a gift of any size at wowgod.com. Thanks to the Unfolding team, Lindsay Caparoon, Michael Shermack, our producer and network director, Jason Rackow. The Unfolding is a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com. We'll be back next week with another page of The Unfolding.